Welcome to the Chapel Thrill Podcast with Hunter Caparelli and JJ Jones.
How are we doing, Tar Heel Nation? And welcome to the second edition of the Chapel Thrill Pod, your home for all things Carolina basketball. I'm Hunter Caparelli, ACC Network Extra host, analyst, reporter. Joining me is my co-host and former UNC football wide receiver, JJ Jones. JJ, let's get right into it. I want to get your take on what you've seen from the Tar Heels through these first three games. 3-0 start. Jump right in. Give me your first initial thoughts and opinions.
I think this is the team to beat in the ACC. You know, before in our first episode, I was kind of skeptical about this team in the beginning, but you know, watching them play these last three games has shown me a lot that they can build from and a lot I've seen. You know, this team, they can score on all phases. I mean, they can shoot the three. They're good on a fast break. When they do their plays, they're scoring a lot of points. But like as just a UNC fan, I am loving this team right now. We had a great 3-0 start, a huge win at home against Kansas.
Huge.
First time Kansas has ever been to Chapel Hill. I think it breaks like a 5-game losing streak against Kansas.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching these guys, man, it's so good to just see them go out there and play. And it's kind of giving me some nostalgia of these past UNC basketball teams. But, you know, like before, I like what I'm seeing from these guys.
100%. Since we aired our pilot episode, UNC played 3 regular season games. Central Arkansas, Radford were kind of those tune-up exhibition games. So got those wins, and then that big Kansas game Friday night. So they're starting off 3-0. They have 2 more of those kind of tune-up games coming up against NC Central and Navy, and then they'll be flying down to Florida for the Fort Myers tournament, which includes games against St. Bonaventure, Michigan State. But definitely really want to break down that win against Kansas. That's obviously the huge one. I think UNC definitely had one of their best and most important halves of the season in that second half when they literally exploded. They were down at 8 at halftime, and they explode. They get the 87-74 win over Kansas. Like you said, it's the Jayhawks' first time in Chapel Hill. They had a 5-game win streak over UNC going into it. Kind of just want to get your thoughts on the difference between that first half and that second half.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing in that first half was like they weren't able to rebound and get the boards that they wanted on the offense and the defensive end against this long, athletic Kansas team. I think, you know, Coach Davis kind of had to get into him, probably have time in the locker room, telling these guys, you know, where UNC, the way they play basketball, they play in transition, and they love playing defense. So they brought that energy. They let stuff out in the second half. You got to see it against this Kansas team. Now, freshman, forgot what his name is, but he's probably the prospect in college basketball right now, in my opinion. They were able to limit shots. I mean, he played well, but at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I saw was better defense and rebounding execution in the second half versus the first half.
It's a great take, JJ. We thought we'd actually bring in one of Carolina's own to help us break down what we saw in those first couple of matchups and preview the next few tests. So we're going to take a quick break right here and get right back to you with our guest and North Carolina senior guard, Elijah Davis. Stay tuned. What's up, Tar Heel Nation? And now, as you can see, we are joined by North Carolina senior guard, son of head coach Hubert Davis, Elijah Davis. Elijah, thanks for joining the show. I know the biggest question right now in everyone's mind was that arm injury that Seth suffered in what was originally thought as practice on Sunday. I know there was a report that came out that I guess was a freak accident in the weight room. So, you know, as someone who's been around Seth in recent days, how is he doing? And how can you reassure UNC fans about losing their senior captain, which looks like might be around 6 to 8 weeks as he recovers?
Yeah, he's in really good spirits. I mean, you know, he's our captain and everything. You know, he's been doing, you know, just being regular Seth, you know, just still, you know, in the huddles and everything. Not up there for pregame as much. And so I've been able to, you know, kind of take a little bit of his role before games. But, you know, he'll be back sooner than later. I can tell you that for sure.
That's awesome. I know in the win over Kansas, that game took a complete shift at the start of the second half. What did you observe I guess, in the locker room at halftime or on the bench during that scoring surge that you think you can maybe credit to that huge comeback victory, the first UNC win over Kansas ever?
I think really what happened was just we kind of settled down. I think a lot of us in the first half, just I think nerves a little bit, and we just weren't playing confident. And second half, you could see, we were playing confident, we were playing hard, playing together. We settled in. We have a lot of new guys on the team, and everything's new. This environment, and so it's taking time, but we're doing a really good job of moving forward, getting better each day.
Awesome. JJ, you want to hop in?
Yeah, just so I mean, quick question. What's the vibe like in the locker room this year compared to last year, in your opinion?
Uh, I mean, last year, I love those guys and everything. I still keep in contact with a lot of them, especially Kate and Vin. Those are two guys I got really close with last year. But I've really enjoyed my time this year. This has been the funnest team I've ever played on. Not just being around my teammates and everything has been just a joy every single day. Being in the locker room. That's what took me so long to get back to the rooms because we were just chopping up in the locker room, just laughing and joking, and that type of stuff. You just don't get everywhere. And the how competitive it is in practice. Even for me, I'm talking smack with whoever. It doesn't matter who you are. It can be a walk-on, starter, bench. It doesn't matter. It's competitive, and it's been just such a joy to just be around.
Awesome, man.
Shout out to Professor Tony Patterson. I know Elijah mentioned Ven. We had class with Professor Patterson last fall. That was super awesome. But I want to kind of go general picture for a sec. I'm curious to know, how have you balanced the relationship between you and your dad as a player, as a teammate, since you joined the team? And I guess, what do you enjoy most about playing for him?
I mean, obviously, being able to play with your for your best friend is really special. But you gotta separate that. You gotta separate family and business. You can't put those two in line because then things can get a little messy. And so, that's something, when I was thinking about transferring, that's something that we talked about to great lengths for months on end. And it's been really good. It's a little bit different this year now. I can get into a game and I'm not redshirting this year, which has been really nice and something, when I checked into the first time, against Winston State, that was like a really emotional moment for me and him, and something
Sure.
really we were talking about last week, just about how my journey and everything, and for it to end here has been nothing short than amazing.
I love it. I love it. JJ, you want to hop in?
Yeah. So for people who haven't seen your game, how would you describe the way you play basketball?
Oh, I mean, just try to make at least mistakes as possible. Especially as a walk on, you try to keep practice going, keep practice competitive. Never take a play off. Made a smart play. Shoot it for sure. That's something I was taught at this young age is to shoot the ball, and so that's
Yeah.
something I try to do. Just make it, but more importantly, just make the smart and easy play and play hard.
Looking ahead, I know you guys have games at home against NC Central and then Navy before flying down to Florida for the Fort Myers tournament, which includes games against St. Bonaventure, Michigan State. I've heard from a few players the thing they like most about these Feast Week tournaments is the similarity to the AAU tournament atmosphere. Do you feel the same way? And how do you guys balance the neutral site matchups between your standard home away schedule?
Yeah, definitely Maui last year felt like a AAU type. That was felt weird, for sure. That was something that, I haven't felt since I was in high school. And
Because they're
so
small, they're small gyms, right? They only really
small
fit.
gyms.
Yeah,
Yeah, small gyms. I think the gym we're playing in this year is super small too. So
yeah.
it's gonna be a cool environment. Get play against two really good teams, St. Bonaventure and especially Michigan State. We got some for them for sure. Um,
Some revenge from last year.
Oh no, 100%.
Absolutely.
We dropped one. We dropped one last year, one that
Mhm.
we shouldn't have lost. And so, we got something for them. Caleb talked about at the beginning of the year, bedazzle belt to everyone. We're trying to, you know, we really believe that. We really believe that we're the best team in the country, and we're going to do that.
That's awesome. What do you got,
Absolutely.
JJ?
Speaking of Caleb, when he comes into this team, being around Chapel Hill, I heard from your dad, if he ran for student body president, he would win. What is his, I guess, how is he in the locker room? How does he connect with the team? And what's something about Caleb that makes him stand out from like any other freshman in the past who's had all this hype?
He's just a good dude, man. Like I just enjoy being around him. A couple of times during the summer, we just went out for breakfast or something. We went to First Watch a couple of times. I think we went to Four Corners, and we just kind of just chatted it up. And I got to pick his brain a little bit. And he's just a guy that just wants to win, and he just wants to win and have fun. But on the court, he knows how good he is too. He has a swagger about him. And if you don't bring it every single day, he's gonna let you know, and it's gonna be a difficult day for you. And so that's something I'm really thankful for that I get to have a teammate like that. Um, just someone, with as much hype as him, just you know, how hard he plays and how funny he is off the court.
That's great. That's great. I think my favorite quote so far from him was I saw he has wallpapers of everything that's been pissing him off over the summer, like to
Mhm,
just use as motivation going into each and every game. I thought
mhm.
that was super cool. But as
I
we
like
wrap
I
things,
like belt to
yeah,
everybody. That right there. That's all I needed to
that's a good
hear.
one
That's
too.
all
That's
I
a good
needed to
one
hear.
too. I love that one too. As we wrap things up with North Carolina basketball senior guard Elijah Davis, whose team is off to a 3-0 start with a top 20 win over Kansas. I'd like to do a little rapid fire question and answer with Elijah, where I'm going to give you a question. Could be about basketball, not about basketball. I just want you to give me a quick answer,
Uh,
really go back and forth. So I'll be right into it. What's your best college basketball arena or your favorite that you've played in other than the Dean Dome?
Allen Fieldhouse,
Awesome. What is your favorite restaurant in Chapel Hill?
Heavenly Buffalo.
It's a good one. Underrated pick, but a good one. What is the greatest basketball game you have ever watched?
Oh, definitely
Uh,
2022 Final Four, UNC Duke, 100%. That
a
was yeah,
great pick. I
that,
mentioned to JJ that I was front row in the student section of that game my freshman year
uh,
for the game against Duke and the game against Kansas. So
I was
great
on
pick.
Franklin Street. I was on Franklin Street for that game,
that
man.
was amazing. Oh my gosh, man. That was
All right,
amazing.
we'll keep going. Who is your favorite athlete of all time?
Besides my dad, I'm gonna say John Wall.
Mm,
I like that pick. I like that. Good pick.
smooth.
What is your favorite pregame or postgame meal or snack?
Uh, I'm gonna say a good burger.
Okay. Okay.
Burger, burger for
Good burger.
post game, not
Huh.
pregame.
If there was a zombie apocalypse, who on your team would you trust most to help you to survive?
Jay Young, 100%. Jay Young.
Why?
He's wild, and yeah, he's wild. I'm trusting Jay Young for sure.
I'll take that. What is the funniest interaction you've had in a practice or a game with your dad?
Uh, oh, yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. I was boxing out Caleb, and there was nothing I could do. He just reached right over me, and if you don't box out, you run. And so they say a lot. He was like, Elijah didn't box out, get on the end line, and I'm staring at him like because I'm like, yo, what do you want me to do? Like, are we dead serious right now? And so I mean, I literally I was like, I think I was low key pushing him out a little bit. But Caleb, I mean, he's so athletic. He just reached the ball over me.
All
So
right.
I looked at him. He looked at me like, "What's up?" Now I had to tone it down a little bit before I had to run some more, but that was when we
Oh my
left.
God. That's great. That's awesome. Last question. What do you love most about Chapel Hill?
I just love the family atmosphere of it. It's where I grew up. It's where I learned to love basketball, and I just love everything about it. And so being back here has been nothing short than amazing. And being close to family, I can't think of a better place to end my career.
I love it. That's hit and run with Elijah Davis. That was great. That was super fun. JJ, you got any last questions for Elijah before we let him go?
Nah, man, just thank you for getting on here and from one athlete to another. Keep going out there doing your thing. Keep working. Keep making UNC proud and just go Heels, man. Appreciate you,
100%.
bro.
Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all,
Uh,
man.
all right, and we're back. Chapel Thrill Pod. Want to thank Elijah Davis again for joining us. It was super cool to kind of hear a voice from inside the locker room, a guy who's been on the team for over a year now, has been there over the summer in the off season, and has now been a part of this team that's off to a 3-0 start. What do you like about that interview and that chat with Elijah, JJ?
I think it's awesome having somebody inside the locker room come on here, kind of give us some insight of what it's like in the locker room. And he's kind of got a double standard. He's a player on the team, but he's also the coach's son. So he has to be smart about what he says before he has to get home. He's coach. It's coach at one point, but his dad at another point. But we appreciate Elijah for coming on here and helping us out.
100%. I know we were talking about that Kansas win before Elijah hopped on the show. So we'll talk a little bit more about that game and then preview these next couple matchups for the Heels. We mentioned with Elijah, that second half was really incredible. Obviously, slow start in that first half. I think turnovers was the biggest kind of bug for the Heels. They had 10 of them, which, I think they were lucky to be down 8 going into halftime. They obviously cleaned that up and shot the lights out of the ball in the second half. What do you think of the first half, the second half discrepancy?
Just in terms of the way they played, you can tell when the game just started that they came out aggressive. But Kansas is a really, really good team, really great historic team, and they kind of showcase what they have and the kind of players they have in the first half, and they went out there and did their job. But I don't know, it was kind of like a flip of a switch in the second half. UNC kind of took it a little bit more serious. They were more demanding on the defensive end and more demanding in the paint. But like you said, they shot the lights out in the second half. And then I think the biggest thing that I liked is having those guys coming off the bench and making plays whenever their chance was made. With Coach Hubert Davis and his past UNC teams, he's known to be the Iron 5, Iron 6 kind of guy. But, when we head out towards the back end of this season, you're going to have those 6th, 7th, 8th role player guys come in and use the best ability of the minutes that they have. And now that Seth's out, they have to even pick it up even more. So,
Right. I don't want to say that we live and die off the 3, but it definitely helps
yeah,
when you're just shooting the ball at a blistering pace. The Heels scored on 10 of their first 11 possessions in that second half, 19 of their first 23 trips. They ended up finishing that second half, shooting it at 67% from the field, and ended up having just over shooting 50% for the game, which ends up being under Coach Davis. He's now 37-1 when UNC shoots at least 50%. I think that combination of the 3-point shooting as well as basically getting anything and everything you wanted in the paint, I think that combination was really just too much for the Jayhawks. What do you think about that kind of being able to shoot it outside, but also being able to go into Caleb and Henry Vasar in the paint, kind of having that combo?
having that dynamic is so vital for this team. I think Vasar was I think everybody would give Caleb Wilson the player of the game, but I think, he's one of those guys that you just have to have on the floor. I know he didn't have, he had a lot of minutes when he was at Arizona, but he's going to have to play a lot for this UNC basketball team. When he's on the floor, he's a difference maker because when you have Caleb on the floor, all eyes are on him. And when that happens, Henry, he can shoot the 3. He can play in the paint. He's able to pass. And so with him in the paint, and then you have all these UNC shooters, it's just a great, 1-2 dynamic for this offense.
100%. We talked to Elijah about Caleb Wilson. He had a brilliant performance in that game. I think he carried the offense in that first half to make sure it was only a single deficit going into the second half. And then he really did a bit of everything in the second half. He finished with 24, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Vasar added 20 and 4 and was really a formidable front court partner for Caleb. Again, I think if Hubert is going to get production from not only Caleb and Henry Vasar, but those other guys around them, Kyan Evans, Jaron Stevenson,
Yes.
Jonathan Powell, and Luka Bogovac, I think if he ends up getting production from all those role guys, it's going to be scary scenes for some of these opponents coming up for the heels. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's going to be key for them is just those, not the role player guys, but not the, not Vesar, not Wilson. If they can continue to go out there and just make those plays, it's gonna help them out a lot in the long run. And I love the way how Evans plays, man. He's a guy who can
Mhm.
distribute the ball when he needs to, but he's not afraid to shoot the ball. I like, Zayden came in the Kansas game, hit a three in the corner. Not a lot of people think he can shoot. Then you have Jaron Stevenson coming in, Jonathan Powell coming in, putting in quality minutes. And like I said, if you can come off the bench for this UNC basketball team and you use your minutes to your best ability, you go out there and you make plays, that's coach, you have opportunities to play, and they're going to need this heading down this stretch.
I think one thing I loved most was the ability to secure loose balls, especially in that first half. I know you can't get a shot to fall, but players are still getting on the ground and seemingly being able to get every loose ball. There was one play where Caleb dove on the ground, got the loose ball. The crowd just ignited. They
Yeah.
went absolutely nuts. So I think being able to have someone like Caleb, who like no doubt is like the central spark to that
Mhm.
energy for the team, and then it kind of cascades into a
Yeah.
team-wide effort of getting all those loose balls. What do you like about the team's energy, from the
I think
Kansas
that's
game, but
what you
also the three games?
Yeah, no, that's what you need. And in today's era with NIL and all that stuff, a lot of fans of college basketball think these players are soft. It's not the way the game used to be played. And I love the way that this team is getting on the floor, getting after it. And I think Coach Davis, his philosophy is playing fast and playing hard and playing physical. And that's what this team has done the past three games. And when you see guys go and dive for loose balls, like Caleb Wilson is a potential lottery top 10 pick, and he's diving on the ball for loose balls in a clutch game and clutch moments. He's willing to give it all on the line for his team. And like you said, it's a catalyst for the other guys. And you love as a fan to see your players go out and give it their all every night and just get on the ground, do the dirty work. And he's the kind of guy who's probably the main player on the team. He doesn't have to do the dirty work if he doesn't have to, but he wants to do it. And that's the difference. A lot of these guys, they don't have that want to ability, but Caleb just has that dog in him to where he wants to win at any chance he can.
Selflessness. I think that's the word. I mean, he really just is selfless. The
Yes.
team was noticeably able to settle down, I think, after halftime as well. They only had one turnover in the second half. That shut off Kansas's easy scoring chances. I know Kansas had 17 points off turnovers in the first half, so that was much more difficult for the Jayhawks to score that win. It ended a Kansas streak that we mentioned. They had won five in a row over UNC. They'd also won seven straight against ACC opponents and 16 of their last 17 against the conference going back to 2012. So, UNC getting a huge win for the ACC as well. Darren Peterson, I want to talk about him a little bit. Super great player for Kansas. Could end up going number one overall in the NBA draft next year. Scored 22 points, and Seth Trimble still did an amazing job defensively on him. Thought all the shots Peterson made, for the most part, were relatively hard earned. And I thought Trimble's ability to handle him one on one the entire game, shows how good he is defensively. I think it helped with having to avoid any kind of switching confusion on screens and whatnot. And I think that's what UNC is going to miss most, over these next 6 to 8 weeks while he recovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and back to Peterson, I think he's just a three-level scorer, and I think Bill Self after the game, he kind of, I think he might, don't quote me on this, but he said something along the lines of Seth Trimble just being one of the best defensive players in the country.
He did
Guarding
say that.
Peterson, he did a great job. Yeah, he did a great job guarding him. I mean, yes, Peterson put up the numbers, but that just shows you how good of a player he is, but also shows you how good of a defensive player Seth is. Seth's one of the best defenders in the ACC. He's like an Energizer bunny, if you can think about it like that. But Peterson, he's a great scorer. He's a great player, and I'm just at the end of the day, I'm glad that UNC got the W against a very very talented and very deep Kansas basketball team.
Totally. Trimble's absence, that moved Bogovats into the starting lineup in his third game was at Tar Heel against Radford. He didn't really shoot it as well as he probably could from the perimeter, but even when he wasn't making shots, he knew how to move the ball around. And think he really knows how to play. So I think he's going to definitely be an X factor as Seth recovers from that injury. He was 3 for 11 from three, but he's going to end up figuring that out and be able to create space going towards the basket and taking advantage of what the defenders give him. He also had a team high 5 assists the other night against Radford. So just that ability to be able to pass the ball as well as score, I think that's going to really help while Seth is out. What do you like about Luka?
I think he's also a 3-level scorer as well. He kind of surprised me because I think of him as more of a shooter, but watching him in that Radford game, him taking it to the basket, not scared to go to the cup, and just continuing to, like you said, team high in 5 assists. He's able to get to the paint and dish it off and find the open man. I think he's kind of a all-around player that we need in this absence of Seth. Defensively, not as good of a defensive player as Seth was, but I think that's when, the UNC, the grit, the physicality on defense from everybody on the court is going to have to be a little bit more tougher with Seth out for the 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Something I thought that was pretty crazy was I think Caleb, through the first 3 games, that game against Radford was probably his worst game. He only made 4 of his 13 shots, missed his only 3-point attempt, and yet he still finished with 13 points, 14 rebounds. It was his first double-double with the Heels. So if that's his floor, then his roof is unimaginable. I mean, Carolina,
his ceiling is insane.
Yeah, it's insane. Like if that's going to be what his worst game is, then I think UNC is going to have high hopes going forward. Kyan Evans, want to touch on him a little bit. Like he didn't have a spectacular stat line against Radford, but I think his ability to just run the offense, controlling the pace, whether they want to push it faster, slow it down. Like sometimes I think he's basing it off of where if we're making or missing baskets, but I think his ability to control the pace and facilitate the ball along with Bogovac, I think he's going to be crucial while Seth is out, and hopefully will help contribute to some big wins when we have, St. Bonaventure, Michigan State coming up, and then that game at Kentucky in a few weeks.
Yeah, I think Evans is a great, just true floor general. He's the kind of player that you want on your team, a true point guard. He's not going to do too much for you. He knows who he is as a player. He's able to score at all 3 levels as well. He's a great defender, but he's not really a scoring guard. He's
Right.
able to he wants to find the assists. He wants to find the playmakers, but he's the kind of guy where if he's open in the corner, you toss it to him, he's going to hit the 3. He's going to make plays. He's going to score when he has to. You know what I'm saying?
He showed that at Colorado State that he could shoot the 3.
Yeah, he can shoot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not only can he. All right, keep going.
No, the only thing is it's a totally different team than Colorado State. He had to be that guy, but here at UNC, he's got so many more weapons around him. And I think that's what kind of fits his game a lot more, is having these weapons to where he can dish it whenever he wants to. But if they need him to score, he'll go score.
100%. I know next time we go live, we'll probably be recapping that Fort Myers tournament over Feast Week coming up in 2 weeks. So I want to preview that for a sec. We have St. Bonaventure coming up first in that tournament. Not too many highlight players. I think the biggest name for St. Bonaventure is the fact that former senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski is their general manager. I think that's the biggest name for St. Bonaventure, but hopefully shouldn't be too stressful of a game for the Heels. I think they should handle business there. Then the big one, definitely, as we talked about with Elijah, Michigan State, looking to get revenge after losing to them in the Maui Invitational last year. Michigan State, they were really good last year. They were 2 seed in the tournament. They ended up losing to number 1 Auburn in the Elite Eight. And I think they're really good again this year under Coach Izzo. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm looking at a few of the players on Michigan State. I'm looking at Jackson Kohler, who comes back. He's been averaging 13-11 through their first 2 games. And Cohen Carr, who also came back for them. He's their leading scorer so far through their first couple games with 14 and 6 rebounds. What are you looking forward towards for that blue blood matchup in the Fort Myers tournament?
I think the front court versus Michigan State in physicality. Tom Izzo and Michigan State have always been known to be a physical basketball team. And I think this will probably be one of the most physical teams that they play up to, probably the most physical team that they've played up to date by far. I'm just excited to see how they're able to handle the physicality and kind of handle the atmosphere. Like you talked about earlier with Elijah, this is kind of like AAU basketball, these kind of tournaments.
Mhm.
So it's not going to be a big crowd. You have to go in there. You have to create your own energy. And that's kind of hard for some teams. It's hard to go into a hostile environment. You have the crowd against you. You can make energy out of that, but this is kind of a neutral site game. So you have to bring the energy with you to go out there and you got to play well. But, Michigan State's always been a physical team. You have the human highlight reel on Cohen Carr, who's just a great player all around. But, at the end of the day, it's going to be a great matchup for UNC to play against this physical Michigan State team. I'm excited to watch.
I hate that Trimble won't be available for that game, considering he hit the three at the buzzer last year to send the game to overtime. I know the Heels eventually ended up losing by 3 in that overtime possession, but just the fact, he hit that huge shot and he won't be available. I think it's really going to be about how the Heels can weather the storm, through these next couple huge non-conference matchups. As we wrap things up here on the Chapel Thrill Pod, something I wanted to get into before we ended was some couple, funny things I saw in the media atmosphere over the last 2 weeks. Field of 68, a company we work for that allows us to do this amazing UNC podcast. They've had some, rankings come out over the last few weeks. One of them included Caleb Wilson being the 5th best freshman in the ACC, which, Jeff Goodman, who I love and admire, who allows us to do this podcast, he retracted those statements and apologized to Caleb in an interview, which I thought was pretty funny. I think Caleb appreciated that. On top of that, I know Field of 68, I'll show this picture to the camera so maybe some people could see, had put UNC as just a tourney team below NC State, Duke, and Louisville as teams that could potentially contend for the title. But then just a few days later, their updated top 25 rankings now have the Tar Heels as the 7th best team in the country. So I'm not sure exactly how you could be a team that's just looking to make the tournament to now being the 7th best team in the country. It sounds like people were overrating the Heels and are now hopping on the bandwagon. JJ, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Absolutely. I think nobody would have thought that we would have beat Kansas the way we did. And I don't think that they would have thought we had played the way we have through the first 3 games. So there's absolutely a bunch of bandwagons who are now hopping on the train. And you know what? We're going to welcome them all on the train. Come be UNC fans.
Yeah,
That's fine.
come
That's
on.
fine with us. We've been
excited.
believing in this team since the beginning. So that's fine. You
True.
guys hop on the train now. But don't hop off whenever
Don't hop
things
off.
things start getting bad. But they definitely were overlooked, like you said, only being a tourney team to now being a top 10 team in the nation. Some people just can't stand Carolina. It's like the
Mhm.
ABC. Anybody but Carolina, man. That's you just have to learn to live it like that.
I think a lot of people might have hopped off the train last year when we were kind of on the bubble. Were we going to make the tournament? Were we not going to make the tournament? And now it seems like a lot of people are hopping back on. It's fine. Again, if you're gonna hop, we'll accept you. You could hop back on the bandwagon, but don't hop back off if the Heels start losing some games. Be through the thick and thin of it. All right, be through the thick and thin.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for the second episode of the Chapel Thrill Pod. Thanks for either watching or listening. We'll be back after the conclusion of the Fort Myers tournament to break down Carolina's performance in those 2 Feast Week matchups, along with a preview of the colossal Blue Blood showdown between North Carolina and Kentucky in Rupp Arena for the ACC-SEC showdown on December 2nd. It's going to be Carolina's first appearance in Rupp in Lexington since 2014. That game, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, and the number 1 Wildcats took down Marcus Page and the number 21 Tar Heels 84-70. So I know the Heels are going to be looking for some revenge from their last appearance in Rupp. JJ, what are you most excited for that matchup? We'll we'll end up doing a bigger preview on our next show, but just initial thoughts.
No, that's the blue blood matchup of blue blood matchups right there. UNC and Kentucky, probably top five, two of the top five most historic programs in college basketball. You gotta love to see it. You love playing in Rupp Arena again, one of the more historic arenas in college basketball. No longer have Coach Calipari, and he's not there with his staff anymore. So it's kind of a different Kentucky team. They just lost to Louisville the other night, so they're coming off a loss to an in-state rival in Louisville. We'll see how they bounce back in these next few games. But I mean, UNC versus Kentucky, you can't ask for a better matchup than that.
Cannot ask for a better matchup. Well, that's going to do it for JJ Jones. I'm Hunter Caparelli. As always, go Heels.
Belt to everyone.